Our final day of Combine coverage here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Then we will have a Combine review on Monday. This is the last day we're doing stuff from Indianapolis with guests and talk about everything that's going on at the NFL Combine in 2026. John Schmeelk and Paul Dottino with you. Big Blue Kickoff Live is, of course, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. We're here in the Hackensack Marina Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. And, Paul, we have had some news. We've had some guys do some of the testing and drills on the field. I have many notes. Where do you... Well, I guess there's really only one place to start here, and that's the guy that stole the show yesterday. And I'll be honest with you. One thing's annoying me about all this. There's a lot of people that were, like, complaining to me, like, oh, you can't pick a linebacker that high. Oh. And now, well, look what he did with his athletic testing. I hope the Giants get him at 5. And that's Sonny Styles. And the point I want to make here... Pardon me. All the great reviews we've gotten about Sonny Styles and the good things we've said about him based on our study, very little of it had to do with his athletic ability.
Correct.
It's everything else, to me, that made him a special player. Yeah, of course, did he have sideline ability and the ability to cover his
tackling technique
safety,
and
tackling, all that stuff, great. But his ability to diagnose, his mental, his leadership.
He's a football player.
Correct. So, to me... We were told that he was going to test well, so I expected him to test well. Now, I didn't expect a 43.5-inch vertical, which is just insanity. But the 40 time didn't shock me. I thought he'd be around between like a 4.5, 4.47, and a 4.53, somewhere in that range.
He was on the low end.
Me. He was. Came in at 4.46 on the official number. But the fact that he's that type of athlete, on top of what he is as a football player, you know, I kind of had him at like a slight level below the Reese Downs Love thing. This, I think, probably slides him up from me even with those guys. So it's a little bit of a rise for me, just because I didn't know he was this good of an athlete. But, you know, he's a really good football player. And I think if it took athletic testing for people to realize that, fine. I guess that's a good thing. But the late bandwagon jumpers are just annoying me a little bit, but it's like,
I get it.
We were telling you this guy was good before that. Have you listened to our shows the last 2 days?
Yeah, if you go and look at the football tape, it's all terrific. You know, he's warranted of the conversation at 5. There's no doubt about that. Look at the guy's football stuff. Right? Believe what you see. The tape doesn't lie. Well, here's the problem. He goes to the combine, and the tape and what you saw, that doesn't lie either. No. It was unbelievable.
He was really good.
It was flat out. You almost thought it was AI when you were watching it, right?
And even more important were, to me, the drills. Everything was just so smooth.
Yes.
He's just such a smooth... And look, they showed the basketball highlights. Daniel Jeremiah on the huddle talked about his basketball highlights. When we had him on Tuesdays, Giants Huddle podcast, and he looks like a basketball player wearing pads. That's how smooth and athletic he looks moving around.
I think freak is a word you could use to describe him.
But he's physical, and that's the difference, right? He has all these movement skills, but he's also a heady, physical football player.
Now, I did a little research after he did what he did and blew my mind, and I kept thinking, like I say, is it AI or is it real? So it's real. So I went back and I did a little research, right? And what I found are our friends at the Math Bomb, the RAS people.
Yep. Okay? Kentley Platt does a great job. He'll join us in a few weeks here as well.
So before we get to him, little preview of what he's going to tell us. So Styles had 10 across the board until he got to the 3-cone. And when he got to that, he only got a yellow, which was, quote, good. It was the only non-green signal on his card.
What was his 3-cone time again? Do you have that in front of you?
I did not write. Well, wait, I did not write that down.
Okay,
I did not write that down. It was yellow. It was called good. It was the only item on his entire card that wasn't bright green. Okay? In summary, and this is not a joke, folks, his RAS score composite was 9.99.
Yeah, he came out fourth of
over 3,200 linebackers that have been tested through the RAS system,
which is since 1987.
That's insane.
Right. And look, he was really good, and he's good at, and just like we've been talking about the last couple of days, he will be solidly in the Giants conversation at pick number 5. He should have been before this. He will be now, and we'll see if first of all we'll see if he's there, and we'll see what the conversation looks like when you get there. I guess what I'll ask you, Paul, before we go into the other conversations here, and then we got 4 guests coming up, folks. Really good group today. We got Connor Rogers, we got Jordan Reid, we got Cynthia Frelund, we got EJ Snyder all coming up. Right now, if I made you choose between Caleb Downs and Sonny, now Caleb Downs is going to work today. So we haven't seen him test yet. I don't think he's going to be some off-the-charts tester.
No, he'll do well.
If you're picking between Downs and Styles, who do you pick?
I'm taking Downs.
Really? Okay.
Yes. That's a no-brainer for me. And to be honest, it's really not that close.
Really? Why?
As long as Downs doesn't fall on his face because of the scheme. We talk about how often when you pick this high, it's not just about how great the player is, but how are you going to use him? And can you get the most out of him with what you're going to do? Denard Wilson is going to maximize what Downs does. Downs will not only help you in the run, he's going to help you in the pass. He's going to help you with the different positions he can play. Styles, to me, if you draft him at 5, you're saying, my man, you're a middle linebacker for the next 10 years. He's playing one position. He is the middle linebacker. He's got the green dot, and we're planting his feet right there in that middle of that defense for the next 10 years. That's not the case with Downs.
All right, let me ask you a question.
The versatility and how you can use him in the scheme gives him more flexibility.
You gave me would you rather have Chris Olave or Kyle Hamilton? Was that the 2 names you gave me?
Right. When we talked about.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw it back in your face.
Right.
Would you rather have Kyle Hamilton or Fred Warner?
Given this situation, Hamilton.
Yeah, I'd rather have Warner.
And that's okay.
And once you get Downs and Styles into the same tier, and I think they are for me now, again, this is not a big move. They were like literally, Downs I think was my 3rd player, and Styles was my 5. So it's not like they were far apart of my board. They're already in the same neighborhood. It doesn't matter where their house is on the block, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think having that type of middle linebacker that, by the way, great cover guy too. So he will impact you in coverage. He can erase the middle of the field. I think I lean that way today. I have to, I'll do one more look at both guys' tape again before I finalize my rankings or whatnot. But I think once you get those guys on the same tier, I think then you do look at position value a little bit, and you see which position is more valuable. And I think having that type of middle of the field erasing middle linebacker is probably going to be a little bit more valuable than a safety. And the Giants might have a bigger need there too, depending on what happens in free agency.
See, I don't think that's the case. I think the Giants have the bigger need. If Denard Wilson wants to play a 3-safety package as his base, then the bigger need is Downs because they already have Bobby Okereke, and I'm not cutting.
Yeah, I don't know if that.
No, we don't know that. We don't know that. But if you're asking me, you're asking me. You're not asking Joe Shane.
I understand.
You're asking me. If I'm dealing with these chess pieces, I'm looking at Downs as a guy who has so much versatility in terms of where you play him and the responsibilities that you give him. Given what Denard Wilson wants to do, I just think that that's a very good component into his disguising and his schematics as opposed to I'm putting Styles in the middle, and that's what he's doing. That's how I see it.
And that's fair. I think that's fair. All right. Couple of linebackers that I want to bring up that I think did really well. Again, important for these testing, folks. Don't count things twice. Mm-hmm. Like if you already thought Sonny Styles was a great athlete, don't count the fact that he's a great athlete twice because of his testing. If it's already in the evaluation, don't count it twice.
Pearson will like this, a golf term. That means it's par for the course.
Correct. Don't count it twice. So Kyle Lewis was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But again, we knew he was a great athlete. He's only 220 pounds. You expected him to test well.
Right.
By the way, if you don't get Sonny Styles, you want to pick Kyle Lewis in the 3rd round to be a coverage inside linebacker, I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay.
I thought throughout that Jacob Rodriguez was excellent. His testing throughout the day was really good. He tested a lot better than everyone thought. He was top 5 in the vert, in the broad. Mm-hmm. I think he had the top 3 cone drill of any linebacker in the class. So he's a guy that was more of a run stopper at Texas Tech, and you're worried about his coverage ability. True. So now you go back. and I had not finished my evaluation on him completely anyway, but I had watched a ton of college football this year, and he was a really good player. Watch his coverage stuff. If you think he can cover, based on this athletic testing, what you see on tape, could he push into the back end of the second round in terms of being a middle linebacker in this draft class? I don't think it's impossible. So he really impressed me, Paul. Golday from Cincinnati did a nice job. Anthony O from Texas had a really nice day working out. Again, he's a smaller guy, only 230 pounds. You expected him to test well. And if you're looking for guys a little bit later in the draft on day 3, Heineke, the linebacker out of Oklahoma, that kid could move. Former lacrosse player. I talked to you about him at the Senior Bowl. He was one of my favorites there. And then baseball player Bryce Betcher out of Oregon. Not the fastest or quickest guy, but he's smooth and he's a big-time hitter. He's another linebacker on day 3 that I would be in a conversation about.
A couple other guys that I jotted down as I was watching, Malachi Lawrence.
Well, that's edge.
Edge rusher.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the edge yet.
I didn't know you were restricting yourself to one position. Go ahead.
No, shift to edge if you want to shift to edge. I'm done with linebackers.
I had Malachi Lawrence there. I also had Tyreek Sapp.
And by the way, we got Malachi Lawrence at the Shrine Bowl, right, Pearson, if I'm not mistaken? He was in one of those long interview segments that we got. So that's only on I think he's only audio, if I remember correctly, though. So if you go back to the Shrine Bowl interviews on the John Soto podcast feed, remember, go subscribe. We need your subscriptions. The Malachi Lawrence interview is in there. Really nice kid. Anyway, Paul, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. The vertical, really good. I also wrote down, what was it? The broad and then a 4.53.
And he was very smooth in all his
very smooth. He looked really good doing it. Yeah. So that was a guy that I jotted down.
He could easily be a second round, top of the third round.
Now, Tyreek Sapp is a very odd case. When you look at him, right, he looks like he should be a professional prize fighter.
He's very stocky.
Yes, thick.
He's very stocky.
Sturdy is another word that I love to use. And very sturdy.
Correct.
Right? He doesn't look very fluid. He doesn't look very smooth. He doesn't look like he would be a phenomenal athlete. He looks more like a power player. Okay? But he did something yesterday when they ran the edge drills and they ran go out into the flat and then they ran the wheel route. You remember the 2 drills?
Huh?
Okay. Surprisingly, he did a really nice job with those 2 drills. And on the one drill, which I believe was the one where you had to cover the wheel route, he made a one-handed grab. He reached up, boom, plucked the ball out of the air like a tight end, one-handed, and did not show any hesitation, did not stop, did not bobble the ball, looked very natural doing it. For a guy who doesn't immediately pass the eye test as an athlete, just looks like an incredible physical hulking specimen. I was impressed.
David Bailey, I thought, did exactly what you thought he was going to do.
That's why
he was
I skipped
really
him.
good.
He's a par guy.
Arvell Reese, again, did exactly what you thought he was going to do. 6'4", 240, 4.47, 40-yard dash. I actually ran a little bit better than I thought he would, to be honest with you. So he looked like a future edge if he can get that kind of pass rush game repped up and really get some of that technical stuff down in terms of his pass rush. Danny Sutton out of Penn State, 4'6", 440, almost a 40-inch vertical, almost an 11-foot broad. He was fantastic, I thought. I thought he did a really nice job out of Penn State. Again, not the bendiest guy, but big, explosive, and fast.
I did not jot him down, but I did not watch every single player the whole day.
Sadly, I did.
I know you did.
T.J. Parker, I thought, looked what I thought he would look like. He helped himself. Mason Rieger out of Wisconsin is a player that looked good at the Shrine Bowl.
He was very smooth
and
yesterday.
He weighed at 250 pounds, too. So he came in bigger than I thought. And
he looked the part.
He had 3 sacks in the actual Shrine Bowl game, so I thought he kind of helped himself in a little bit.
I agree with that.
I was not impressed with Keldrick Falk. I thought there was very little explosion with him, which is what I saw on tape. I think he's a guy that eventually will get drafted higher than I would be willing to draft him. He's big and he's long and he's smooth.
Yes.
But there's just no burst there. And I have trouble with that. If you're defensive lineman, you don't have really good get off, you're going to have trouble being effective.
You know how that's a big pet peeve for me. That's a big pet peeve. Now, I did not watch his football film yet. All I did was see him yesterday. I thought he looked very athletic and very smooth and ran the drills. To me, it was like he could do it in his sleep. That's how I saw him running the drills. Now, in terms of the explosion stuff you're talking about and getting off at the line. I haven't studied that yet. I got to look at it.
Yeah, but even the start-stop in the drills I thought was a little bit sluggish. But again, smooth, just not explosive as an athlete. Romello Height, I thought, looked pretty good. I thought he might run a little bit faster. 4.64 was okay, but his jumps were good. Those are the guys mostly that I have written down here.
I got two D linemen.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Did you have any D line?
You know what? I do. You go first, and then I'll give you a couple.
Banks, who unfortunately had a cleat problem and had to stop early and couldn't do everything because he had irritated his feet. God knows how that happens. You'd think you'd bring comfortable cleats when you go to the combine. But his broad jump and his vertical were very impressive for a man of his size. Very, very impressive. And I also wrote down K-Part with his vertical jump, and he ran a 4.83. Wow.
Yeah, K-Part is in our video compilation, I believe, from the Shrine Bowl interview. So you guys could check that out, too.
A man that girth should not be able to do that.
And
so
when you sit down next to him, he doesn't look like the biggest guy either.
No, and you know, somehow when he did what he did, I'm like, really?
And my point is that he carries the weight well.
He does.
So he looks like, but he's always been a good athlete. He was like a 5-star. The production has not caught up with the physical ability yet.
But those were the two D linemen that I wrote down that I really was happy. And then the other thing I wrote down here, this was on the negative side, was very unhappy with Lee Hunter, who we talked about how he's a 1-2 down run stopper, doesn't have a tremendous amount of pass rush. Well, his athletic prowess in the testing did not look very good to me. However, his googly eyes were really fun.
21-inch vertical jump, I think.
It wasn't good.
Something like that.
No, I don't know. I forget what the number was. I just wrote down vertical jump was not great. I liked his personality.
Yes.
His interview was terrific on TV, and the way he was making fun with the camera was really fun. Okay, great teammate perhaps, but his testing didn't go so good for me.
Zane Durant from Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I expected that out of him. He's a smaller, upfield, explosive defensive pass rusher. So again, don't double count that. But I thought he did what he had to do. And this is actually has a lot of nose tackles, Paul, in this group that I think can really help you on day 2 and day 3. So
yeah, I wouldn't mind taking one later.
So it's not like this is like, oh, well, we're going to get great athletic testing out of the 330-pound nose tackle.
No.
So, it's just one of those groups where you have to understand what they are and exactly how you bring in and count some of the athletic stuff for this defensive tackle class, which is much more of the bigger guys that are going to be pluggers than the upfield 3 technique types, which is really more of what we've had the last couple of years.
Well, and in reality, when you're talking about a guy who's going to play on the interior of the line, especially on the defensive side of the ball, attitude, grit, heart, durability, want to, that's stuff they don't test at the Underwear Olympics. Okay? And those are much more important factors for a guy who's going to be, bleeding and sweating and really mucking it up, going against some of these guards and centers right over the line of scrimmage. So, be that as it may.
Disappointed C.J. Allen didn't participate?
No, he did not.
Which I found odd. Now, by the way, folks, this is why I'm going to handle this. I probably shouldn't. If you're not hurt and you choose not to run or participate, I'm going to assume you weren't going to be good. Because otherwise, why wouldn't you do it? So
that's a very common thought.
You now have to prove it to me at your pro day.
On the other hand, we all know that Bailey is a top 5 pick, and he did everything.
And so did Sonny Styles. And so did
Sonny Styles did everything. Yes.
But now radar up on Ruben Bain. Radar up on Peter Woods.
I know.
Radar up on everyone else. And now Mekhi Lemon's not going to do anything. Jordan Tyson's not going to do anything. So radar up on these guys now. How are they going to test when they test? And that makes me nervous. And I've been scarred by the Evan Neal experience of everyone telling me what a good athlete he was. He didn't participate at the combine, and then all of a sudden he gets here. He's like, oh, well, I guess he wasn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So at least not a top-level athlete in terms of being movement skills and stuff like that. So now these guys have to prove it to me at the pro day. I think it's a mistake. Like, that track is fast in Indy. People run fast there.
Yes.
So I don't know why you wouldn't give yourself 2 chances, but if you run slow at Indy,
you could always do better.
Then you get a second chance.
Especially on your home turf.
Right. So I don't understand why you wouldn't take 2 chances at it, but it is what it is. You got corners today, so some important times there. We're going to have Mansour Delane run. Jermon McCoy, unfortunately, is not ready yet.
No.
Which makes me even more nervous if I was thinking about picking him. Because he tore his ACL last January, so it's more than a year off. He said he'll run his pro day, so we'll see. That's an injury thing. So that I'll be a little bit more generous with. We're going to see Avion Terrell, a lot of these other corners that could be late first-round pick go today, which will be fun. Caleb Downs today. The safeties, I want to see what Dylan Thieneman runs, the safety out of Oregon, who's a very good player. And then you have the wide receivers and the quarterbacks on Saturday. So a lot to look forward to.
You know, I just think that right now, as we go through this, surprises, there haven't been as many. And we discussed this actually the other day. A lot of what we've already expected, we're kind of just getting confirmation on. And that's kind of good, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think. We'll see. We got a few more days to go.
Absolutely. Folks, don't forget, if you're looking for more than just a ticket, Elevate Experiences delivers VIP access to the world's biggest events. From the Super Bowl to NASCAR to PGA Tour tournaments, don't just attend. Elevate the experience at elevateexperiences.com. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. All week long, we've had a great group of guests. I'm not going to name everybody because we'll be here forever. But we got 4 more coming your way, and we're going to lead things off in Indianapolis today with our good friend Connor Rogers. And now we head back to Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. We bring in from SNY, Connor Rogers, also NBC Sports as well. Connor, it's good to talk to you, man. How are you?
I'm great, guys. You guys are missed here. It's tradition that we always catch up with the Combine, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we had your partner on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, Trevor Sikkema, on yesterday, and I got to be honest with you, he was absolutely killing you for like a good 15 minutes.
What is the deal?
We didn't even get the draft prospects. It was just all of your deficiencies. He basically graded you out, and it was not positive.
He called you a practice squad player.
Oh my God, we're gonna have a real chat if he's still around here. So notice how he slipped out a Radio Row already too. It was really,
you know what?
timely.
It's funny. I prompted him and I gave him a shot to take a shot at you, and he refused actually. So you should be very happy your partner did stand up for you very well.
He's too nice of a guy, and that's why we're a team, man.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get to it. Connor, Giants at 5 here. This is not your normal draft where we'd be talking about some wide receiver or edge rusher or offensive tackle at 5. It's a little bit different. So if you're the Giants at 5, what's your thought process thinking about what you do with this pick?
I mean, give me a great player that can help lead my defense is where I kind of gravitate towards, and I'm sure John Harbaugh feels the same way. Now, there's an open-door conversation to keep hammering away at this offensive line when you look at Mauangoa from Miami that's a right tackle that maybe can play right guard, and, you know, Spencer Fano from Utah, which it just feels a little early for this offensive line class that is good, not great. I want to get a difference maker, and the difference makers to me are kind of ping-pong for the Giants between 2 teammates, and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, man. Like, you look at those guys. Sonny Styles is the dude at Ohio State that everybody just kind of follows. Former starting safety that moved to linebacker and looks like a linebacker, doesn't look like a safety, can run sideline to sideline. We know the identity of Harbaugh's team, how important the off-ball linebacker is. I don't care about the salary structure in the top 10 that people are kind of trying to twist themselves into a pretzel over. If he's a great player and you believe in him, then take the guy. And that could be said about Caleb Downs at 5 as well. This is somebody that is just such a smart, sound player. Very, very intense, can play in that 2 shell, can match up against tight ends, comes downhill, blows up screens, gives you such a responsible player on the back end as well. So for the Giants, it just feels like, can you hit a triple here? Like maybe we don't need to swing for the grand slam at a weird spot or even go for, but I feel like I can hit a triple in this draft with Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles. That'll be the DNA of my defense for the next 8 years.
The assumption is that there are a lot of receivers. So how much do you equate or put into the equation here that if the Giants pass on a receiver at 5, they can still get a good one to help Jackson Dart at 37?
I'm all in on that thought process, and I'm glad you brought it up because I love Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon, the big 3 at the top, but you don't really have to do that at 5 if you're the Giants because you got the guy in Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is a superstar. Now, we'll see what they do. You know, I understand he's coming back from injury, but Malik's going to be in a good place. He's a different kind of player. He'll be fine. Wan'Dale Robinson, what's the future for him, which kind of makes this equation interesting. But going back to the pick in the top 40, like you said, in round 2, one of these guys has to fall, man, and they're really, really good. I don't know if it'll be Casey Concepcion and Omar Cooper Jr. or, you know, even look at Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, but one of those guys has to be there for them in a wide receiver class. Tell me if you've heard this before. It's another deep group. Or even if you want to take a little bit more risk and get a vertical threat like Chris Bell, who, yeah, he's got the ACL he's going to be coming off of. Maybe they don't want to do a double medical risk with Neighbors coming back from that and a prospect coming back from that. But the point stands that the depth of this wide receiver class, there's going to be some real gems in the top 40 that I don't think you have to take one if you already have a number 1. with your 5th overall pick.
Yeah, two guys that I think would really complement Neighbors well. Both of you did not mention. One is Denzel Boston. My guess is that you think he's going to be gone by 37.
Can't see that one, but maybe.
Yeah, I agree with you, though. I think he's going to be gone, too. How about Brazel from Tennessee? Now, I understand Giant fans just drafted Jalen Hyatt. They might be a little nervous about Tennessee wide receivers, but I see a very different player on tape than I saw with Hyatt, and a more advanced player, to be honest with you, in terms of as limited as Tennessee's offense is. I thought Brazel was asked to do more, being kind of their isolated perimeter wide receiver, unlike Hyatt, who was kind of their slot move guy.
You're 100% right. Brazel actually has to deal with hands on him once in a while. He's asked to do more. The footwork needs to be a little bit more detailed. So I like that shout for sure. He's somebody that kind of trying to figure out how to stack him in this class, because the ceiling there is really, really promising. And I think the narrative that you kind of just, broke down, which is great, is that he's not just like every single Tennessee wide receiver that comes out and it's a gimmick role or a gimmick speed role. So I think that's another player. And then, you look at it, if you want physicality, Malachi Fields from Notre Dame is just kind of soaring up here. This is somebody that's played a consistent level of football at 2 different programs, which speaks volumes to me. I think if you could transition from one program where you had success and do it at a program where expectations are even higher, that tells me a lot about your character and your ability to kind of level up. And that's what you're going to be asked to do at the NFL level. Now, I loved Fields as this kind of day 2, even maybe round 3 wide receiver. It feels like he shot up boards even higher than that. But you need a big physical guy that could block and go up and win at the catch point, and that's what he's going to do for you.
Carter, the Giants don't have a 3rd-round pick, so if they want to get any wide receiver help for Jackson Dart, and they don't get it in the first 2 rounds because they want to go to another priority, what does it look like in the 4th? Are there guys who even have a decent make-it grade at the 4th round?
Yeah, that goes to show you the depth of this class. You think of, does a Skylar Bell make it there from UConn, who was a shrine kind of player? Now, he might be more in the 3rd round. You watch the UConn offense. They kind of use him how Baltimore with Todd Monken used Zay Flowers, where it's this unique role of just getting him touches at all 3 levels of the field. And that would be someone to me, maybe because of the lack of size and coming from a program like UConn, he doesn't get the same kind of spotlight that some of these other guys do. When you look at, how about Kevin Coleman Jr. from Missouri? He's played at 4 different schools.
Great Senior Bowl. Great
Senior Bowl, because he separates. And the name of the game in the NFL, the way the rules are dictated right now, is can you win, quickly into your release package and against man coverage. And Kevin Coleman Jr. is the guy that does that to me. And then, we were talking earlier about Omar Cooper Jr. Well, if you want a possession receiver, where does Elijah Surratt go from Indiana in this draft? Wow. I don't think it's as early as everybody else thinks. I really don't. He's not big enough that you could just talk yourself into this premium possession player, but he's also somebody that's not going to win with speed, so he kind of falls right in the middle, and that feels more like 4th round range for me. But he's a pro's pro that catches the ball. He understands the route detail and footwork and on time. So, yeah, it goes to show you once again, this is a deeper wide receiver group once again.
Testing will be very important for Elijah Surratt. He could help himself with good agility drills and a 40 time this week. All right, Connor, let's jump over here to the guard position. The Giants have a free agent starting right guard in Greg Van Roten, and John Runyon Jr. is under contract, but he only has 1 year left on his contract. So they're really looking at a guard spot where they don't have a lot of depth for the future. What do you think of the depth here at guard, whether you're looking at round 2 for the Giants at 37, maybe round 4 like Paul was just talking about, once you get past Vega and some of those other guys that are closer to the top of this guard market?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the 2nd round pick. Where does Emmanuel Pregnon fall from Oregon? That's somebody that I thought he played his best football at the highest level for Oregon this year. And someone, once again, they're like, he can really giddy up and go. I mean, that's impressive to me at the guard position when you're asked to move like that and land on defenders when you're climbing at the 2nd level or you're pulling, and it requires so much body control and patience and hand placement. If they want to be a physical run-the-ball team for their young quarterback, like that's the kind of player you're looking at. How do you project some of these tackles to move inside, even if it's for the short term, like a Maxie Honicher from Arizona State, Cage Casey from Boise State that started multiple years at left tackle for them? Maybe doesn't have the size that you typically project at tackle, but do you feel like you can, when I say size, I mean more of the length ability as well, but he's a technician that you could feel good about him transitioning to the inside. So definitely some interesting names there. Chase Basantis is another guy that kind of falls into that category. He'll be a day 2 player as well. So this guard and center class, still kind of rifling through it and figuring out, who's going to fall where and what's the upside with some of these guys. But like you said, all these teams love to kind of find a discount at that position rather than taking it early. And, Vega Ioane that you brought up, like he's probably going to be a top 20 pick at guard. And that's because you know what you're getting. But a lot of teams would love to kind of find that bargain aisle rack kind of player if they don't get it in free agency.
Yeah, I'll throw Jennings Dunker into that mix as a tackle that could move into guard. I'm not sure he's getting to round 4 though. I feel like he's a round 3 guy, so we'll see about that.
How about Rutledge out of Georgia Tech as a possible 4th rounder?
Yeah, I think that's right where he would be, and that's kind of a hard-nosed player, right? That's played enough football to kind of put you in that perspective. He's nasty, plays with an edge. He kind of fits into that mold of what they're going to, once again, like, there's things we could take from the Ravens style to the Giants with Harbaugh, and then there's a little bit of unknowns. It feels like a certain type of DNA in the up front on the offensive and defensive lines is something that will carry over. So I think that's something to kind of look into with how they draft both offensive and defensive linemen.
How do you think John Harbaugh is going to impact how the Giants look to draft and build this team? Connor, you kind of mentioned it, find the leader of the defense, stuff like that. But how do you think their entire player acquisition process might change from free agency to the draft this offseason with John Harbaugh having such a big influence on personnel decisions?
Urgency. Guys that are ready to roll. That's it to me. I think the Giants organization as a whole is tired of waiting around. I think Harbaugh didn't come here to let's retool and rebuild in year 2 and 3. We'll be good. Like, no, I think that's why I bring up Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs. They played at Ohio State where the expectation is to win a national title game and to be the best player on the defense. And they played under Matt Patricia where they're asked to do NFL aspects of the game. So that's where I look at it and go, and, even some of the players that I talked about with you guys in that round 2 selection area, like urgency is the word to me. You got a great young quarterback that you're excited about. You have a skilled, kind of room there with Malik Neighbors coming back from injury, and we'll see what happens with Wandale, and we'll see Scadaboo coming back from injury as well. You have a lot of talent on the defensive line. Why can't this team compete? We saw the Commanders 2 years ago turn things around really quickly. The Eagles are in a very strange place, and so are the Cowboys, where you're not sitting there and looking up at, David versus Goliath kind of situation. So I know it's a weird thing to say because patience is required through the NFL draft, but in a draft that there's a lot of question marks, rather than getting so tied in a pretzel over positional value and salary slots and everything like that, give me the best players that are ready to put this team over the top.
Connor, we know you do a lot of stuff with the Jets, and they're picking 2nd. The Giants are picking 5th, so the Giants will obviously be very interested in whatever the Jets decide to do ahead of them. They just made a trade this week at the Combine where they sent an edge rusher out and picked up a defensive tackle. Does that kind of make Bailey maybe fait accompli for them at 2?
Hey, Maurice, I think it's good news for the Giants in terms of if you're worried about, say you're a Giants fan and you love Caleb Downs, and there's been talk around, will the Jets take a safety at 2? You're all over it. It feels narrow now, right? You traded an edge pass rusher that didn't fit your scheme anymore for a D tackle that does fit your scheme. They like Will McDonald, but it opens up the door across from him for a pass rusher that now fits more of that Carl Dunbar 3-4 front, where you look at it and go, I know David Bailey could do that when I watched that Texas Tech tape, and I know NFL teams want Arvell Reese to do that from Ohio State, and those are 2 players. Now, Arvell could play off the ball as well, so maybe Giants fans would be excited about him in that situation. I think a lot of NFL teams want him to play on the edge. He was vocal here. He said, I want to start rushing the passer more too. So I think for the Jets, it's dangerous to say this guy's in February, but it's starting to feel like a 2-man race for the 2nd overall pick.
And O'Connor, I know what I say. In my opinion, doesn't really matter. And Arvell Reese wants to play edge because guess what? That's where you're going to get paid. I'm sorry. Right. He is a much better off-ball linebacker right now than an edge player.
Yeah.
Now, he's a great run stopper on the edge. Like some of the, he gets his arm in the guys and he stops run on the edge really well. He has very limited pass rush moves. And I know as a rookie, you want to narrow the role. You don't want to widen it to kind of slow the player down. But if you want him to impact the game right away, to me, and he even said at the podium yesterday that, look, I'm really raw as a pass rusher. I need to get better. I either speed or power. I don't have any other moves. He basically said that at the podium. For a player to admit that to me is crazy, but I guess, he's self-actualizing reality, and I appreciate that. But I have a hard time moving him off an off-ball linebacker. I just think he is so good at what he does, and use him as an off-ball linebacker and a blitzer on 3rd down. That, to me, should be his role to start in his NFL career. I know I'm in the minority, but that's what I believe.
Well, I think right now, to be fair to you, and I did this as well when we did our linebacker rankings because he was my number one linebacker, is that you're evaluating the now. And it's for us at home watching tape, I know he's a dang good off-ball linebacker right now at 20 years old. 20 years old. Now, he's got the hands, like you said, and he's got the athleticism, and he's growing into a body that might be 250 pounds before you know it, to play on the edge and be an attacking, kind of 3-4 outside linebacker. So it's very interesting to me. The sense I get here in Indy is more teams like him in that outside linebacker role. We saw Jalen Walker do this with the Falcons, and the dividends are pretty good, honestly. I was actually surprised how smooth the transition was. So teams always chase the big ceiling, the tap into the big ceiling, and it feels like that's going to happen with Arvell. Whether it hits or not, that's a bigger question and a bigger risk.
I will throw this out there, though. I think both Jalen Walker and Micah Parsons have more juice and bendiness as edge rushers than what even Reese showed, who I think is more of a power player. I might be wrong about that, but that's at least what I saw.
Fair. Yeah, I think though Reese has way more power and size than Walker, and that's why you can talk yourself into the baseline there. Micah is a dangerous place to go, as you said, because Micah, how quickly people forget what it was like evaluating Micah Parsons in that draft, man. That guy was different and shocking. He's been pretty different at the NFL level.
All right, final one from me, Connor. Give me the top 4 picks before the Giants get on the board at number 5.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Well, we got the bingo space. Mendoza should go number 1 to the Raiders. I feel good about that. This one's almost 50-50, but I'll give the edge to Arvell Reese going 2 to the Jets if this is predictive. There's part of me that goes, I know what David Bailey does right now, and I think I would take David Bailey, but it's not an easy combo. It's really, really not. Arizona is such a weird team, man. They have so many weird holes and a young coach, and we don't know who the quarterback is. Not that that matters in this spot, but they need help on the offensive line. But I also think they need a premier defensive player as well. That's really, really tricky. I'll say that feels like Bailey. Reese and Bailey combined for somewhere in the 2 and 3 slot. The wild card with Tennessee is how much do they fall in love with Ruben Bain for their system, right? Like
they would love an edge. They would love an edge rusher, I would think, at 4, right?
Yeah, I'll say the first 4 picks end up as a Mendoza, Reese, Bailey, Bain, where it leaves the Giants sitting there staring at both Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs.
We're not going to complain.
No, we're not. Well, Connor, we're going to close it. Where would you go in that situation if you're the Giants?
Downs, and it's not easy because Downs will be a top 3 player for me. When it's all said and done, there's a world where Styles is a top 6, 7 player for me. Harbaugh, I would think, will love the linebacker, but I'm not going to pretend like I talk to Harbaugh every day and know. I'm just trying to get the feel.
We don't either, Connor. We don't either.
There. Yeah, he might be watching this and laughing and be like, this fool, man. But, man, I would take Downs because, God, the stability that it would give you on the back end of your defense and the intensity that would bring. The Giants' front 7, in my opinion, is going to be really, really good. I love what they have at D tackle and edge. Can you find a stopgap linebacker in free agency where you don't feel pigeonholed into taking that position? And then you're just not going to find a Caleb Downs out there, in my opinion. So, yeah, I would take Caleb Downs at 5, and I'd go to sleep pretty easily at night when my head hit the pillow if I was the Giants.
And now we go back to Indianapolis at the Combine. We welcome in Cynthia Frelund. She's the analytics expert for NFL Network. We call her the numbers queen, the math queen here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Cynthia, you got Schmeelk and Dottino trapped here in New Jersey. We appreciate you joining us. How's Indy?
It's missing some really important people. I guess, you guys let a little snow get in your way. I don't know.
Yes, we're soft. I'm not going to argue that. Very soft. Let's start here. You are an offensive line expert. We talk about this every year. For people that don't know, Cynthia's dissertation or thesis was on offensive line and how testing will impact what they look like and how they run the 40. So the offensive linemen haven't gone yet, so maybe your information is limited. But from what you've seen from this group and what you've done with your research, what do you think of this offensive line group? What guys have stood out to you, and just your overall thoughts on that group in the 2026 draft?
Well, it's so interesting because this is the first year that we're really seeing like the combined effects of NIL with the transfer portal. So you see guys now who are 20 and 23, and usually that's like a 24, like they can be even older, it's kind of a strange thing. So there's that's the first part. And then the second part is the playbooks that they had in college, because they transferred so often, they've gotten thinner and thinner. So you're not seeing as many different looks, like pulling guard, find one of those, I dare you. Things like that are very interesting, right? So it's weird. I mean, we always talk about tackles. I'm tend to be a little partial to the Miami tackle, Francis Mawanoa. I think to me, he's only 20. He'll probably measure at 6'6", a little bit more than that. Like, just built really well. His knees look great. His ankles look great. That's probably the one that I think, at least for now, is my number one.
Cynthia, let me ask you about the way that the makeup of the offensive and defensive lines over the years has changed, right? We saw years ago, we saw the big hulking defensive tackles. Then we saw Aaron Donald start to get people involved in three techniques and guys who were thinner and penetrators and stuff like that. From all the years that you've been doing these analytics about the trenches, because that's always been, your go-to stuff, how have those things had to change with the style of players and the physicality and the makeup of how those lines have altered over the years?
Well, nobody really plays base anymore. I mean, you can say you're a base 43 or you're a base 34 or whatever, but what does that even mean? And how often are you subbing players out? I mean, I was looking at the amount of, I looked at the next gen stats to see like the amount of extra like running the Broncos did and the Eagles did subbing out the defensive front players. And I looked at it over time and it's like, those guys are subbing in and AKA running like 8 times more often than they were even 5 years ago.
Wow.
Like something crazy like that. So a tweener makes a little bit more sense, right? Like, I mean, you're not going to ask like a giant nose tackle to like run in and on and off the field that often. I mean, I guess you could, but it'd be funny. But ultimately, you can see how they're used in positions or situationally a little bit more often. So there are more guys in this draft class that I would consider tweeners, or at least how we would have characterized them as that a couple of years ago. But I don't know. I really like if you look at the guy from A&M, I'm a big Cassius Howell fan. He had like no fatigue in college, like his fourth quarter numbers and first quarter lateral movement, front burst, all that stuff. He just didn't fatigue. So to me, that's kind of one of the ways to counterbalance, like maybe not being the exact prototype of size, height, weight, that kind of thing.
All right, Cynthia, you actually brought me to my next question. This is something we've talked about the last few years when you've joined us. How is the use of GPS and the usefulness of it, and how it's, advanced and how it can be compared from conference to conference, evolved over the last few years, and how valuable have NFL teams found that GPS data in measuring exactly the type of thing you just talked about, but even things like change of direction, things like that?
Yep. So I think that so all of the NFL teams, like briefly, they're given the same set of data to work with. We actually added something this year that hopefully in a couple of years it will be added to the full list of stuff, which is the optical tracking, which means, but right now we have X and Y coordinates. So we kind of know where you are on lateral motion, forward, backwards motion. Well, once we get that optical tracking, then you can get the arm angle, and that's going to be pretty neat. But the chip that's in the ball and in the shoulder pads, and you can approximate a lot of things right now. The thing is what am I looking for? And that's where teams have an edge or don't have an edge, because if they know what they're looking for, they can sort the data to answer the question they're looking to answer. So the change of direction, a lot of times, like how much space does someone have? Like, for example, if you look at does a team play a lot of zone? Well, my zone is on average 2 yards more generous than another zone, because what does zone mean, right? It just means not man or whatever. So ultimately you can start to look at relative differences to exploit mismatches in certain areas.
What are the things that you like to look at, Cynthia, in that GPS data that you find particularly useful in evaluating individual players?
So I think fatigue is key, because I think that's like how much I erode in the fourth quarter in any position is fascinating, because how tired do I get? That's the advantage for the other side. So that's the first one. I like the change of direction. I like burst. So how fast you get off the line of scrimmage, because that really helps. I really like all of what happens after contact is made data, because it's very hard in football to run a perfect line without anyone touching me. So I care about, is it bad contact, meaning am I getting through like a front end collision or just a little side, like how elusive is someone, because that's really where you gain yards or stop yards, if depending on, right, like which side of the ball you're on, is if you can make your tackle count or if you can get out of that tackle.
Little bit of an off-balance question, because, Cynthia, to be frank with you, I'm not a techie, okay?
Really?
But for those people who
Could've
are out
fooled
there
me.
who are very concerned about, well, how is this game going to look different for me at home? Do you have any inclination as to how data and the graphics and the technical stuff and all this updated stuff is going to change how we view games at home?
I think a lot of what you'll be able to do is watch how you'd like, right? Like in the past, we had one broadcast, you had one set of announcers, and you had one set of graphics. Now I think we're going to have multiple broadcasts or multiple different versions of the same broadcast, where if you're interested in perhaps focusing on more of the defensive players, you could do that. You're going to have more ability to focus on what you're interested in, because the way that the technology works allows me to have a more custom experience with what I'm watching. If sometimes, when they pan around, sometimes they would show you the formation angle, meaning like, basically the quarterback's butt, right? So the backwards angle. I don't like watching that angle, but some people do. That's like a video game angle. People who are video gamers, they love to watch that. If they want to watch that, great, they'll be able to do that. So I think you're going to be able to get a more 360 view at home pretty simply, which I think will be very cool because fans have gotten so smart. They now know a lot of these different, like 10 years ago, you didn't really talk about, bare fronts. Fans were talking about that. Now they know exactly what that is. And they're really like keen on figuring out what's the strategy against it? Where does my guy go? Who's good? Who's bad? How does it work? So I think that the technology will allow us, especially at home, to have a really immersive experience with the sport.
Do you think they'll provide a 4x3 black and white version? Because I think that's what Paul has put a request in for, because that's what he was used to growing up. Do you think the league will be willing to provide that just for him, really?
I bet they would. I bet they would. You just got to ask the right guy. I mean, you're in New York. You could just like walk up to Park Avenue and figure it out. You could figure it out.
Final question, Cynthia. The Giants could be in the neighborhood for a linebacker and safety. I always think of those as mental positions, how quick you react to things, how you see them, how you anticipate. But for you, when you look at the data for those two positions specifically, what are some of the things that you're really trying to keep track of?
Well, first I will say my very favorite player in this entire draft is Caleb Downs, the safety.
Mine too.
Out of Ohio State. So it's interesting because you talk about being mental. Like I say safety with quotation marks because he's of the same mold as like Nicky Manwari or Derwin James or Minka Fitzpatrick, like those Kyle Hamilton, multiple guys who are not one position, but many. So you're getting a lot of different angles and smarts covered with that. And so I think you're sort of talking about a blend when you talk about the cerebral linebacker or the cerebral safety, right? Like which one's going to be the center fielder of your defense? And I think a lot of that is anticipation angles. So can they, as the ball's moving, do they turn their hips just instinctively? Does that happen with them? That appears to be hard to teach, something that you can measure. It appears to be an instinct thing. Perhaps you could hone it, but I don't know. I haven't seen that happen very often. But I would say ultimately their ability to minimize the angle of pursuit. That's really like nailing it down.
Cynthia, we appreciate the time. I know you got to run. You sure?
All
right, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah.
One more.
All right, I need to ask you, because we're hearing that there's not a lot of premium players in the top 5 or the top 10 in this draft by the draftniks and by the people who watch the tape. What does the data say? Are there top 5 real blue chip guys based on the scientific evidence?
This is a weird year because, like I said, the playbooks are thin, the ages are weird, they're resetting the market. I actually do think that we have some guys here who, in the right system, will become blue chip players, but there aren't as many of the guys who, you drop them into a neutral, like any team, and they could be a star right away. I think this is a little bit more situational. Like, I don't even know. Like, I look at all these edge rushers, and I'm like, is Ruben Bain the best one? I don't know. Is Arvell Reese the best? I don't know. I sit there, and in the past, you're like, well, this one, their tape is clearly heads and shoulders above other people's. This year,
Abdul
it's like
Carter,
in this system,
for example. Yeah, Abdul Carter,
Right.
for example, right.
Abdul Carter, he was up here, but you could drop him on any team. He would have been useful, right? But like where this year, it's kind of like, well, in the right situation, maybe. But I do think Caleb Downs is one of them.
Cool.
Cynthia, awesome stuff. Appreciate it. And you can see Cynthia all week long on NFL Network's coverage of the NFL Combine. Enjoy Indy for us. We'll talk to you soon, Cynthia.
Take care.
I mean, you should be here. You should be here.
Next year.
All right, and now we're joined by friend of the program from ESPN, Jordan Reid. Jordan, how is Indianapolis, my friend?
It's good, man. We're missing you here, so we can't officially start until you get here.
Dude, I've gone to every combine since 2012. I feel very weird right now. Like my 14-year streak is probably going to end because my flight has been canceled. So we'll see how that goes. But this is a different draft. This is one of the weirder drafts, Jordan, that I think I've ever seen, in that the guys we're talking about at the top are not at premium positions. So I think we're going to learn a lot about what teams value what positions and skill sets, depending on how these guys all go off the board at the top of this draft.
Yeah, it really is a very unconventional draft, John. And I think the two best players in it are at non-premium positions. And that's Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame, the running back out of Notre Dame, and then also Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State. I think those are the clear two best players in this year's draft class. And I think the Giants are in a great spot at number 5 overall to see exactly if Downs is still there. I don't think they'll be in contention for Love as far as adding him to the team just because of how good Tyrone Tracy has been. But I think Caleb Downs definitely is in contention to go number 5 overall.
How close do you have Sonny Styles in that mix, Jordan? Because I asked because another non-premium guy, but man, the tape is awesome. It's hard for me to find a weakness. How close do you have Sonny Styles into that mix there?
I think he's squarely in it, honestly. And if you just think about what Harbaugh has done at the middle linebacker spot over the past few years, or when he has been there, whether it's C.J. Mosley, Patrick Queen, and some of the other players that they have had in the middle historically, I think he's going to want that guy in the middle. And I definitely can see Sonny Styles being in contention because of that reason.
Now, Jordan, from our early conversations and from what John and I have studied the last few weeks, it doesn't look like there's a top 5 offensive lineman. In fact, there may only be 2 in the top 15. How surprising is that for you, given the fact that people have put such a high value on O-linemen?
It's a very interesting class. Honestly, we don't have that marquee guy at the top like what we saw last year with, Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks, Armand Mimbu. I just don't see that type of or that caliber of prospect in this year's class. But I think there is a lot of depth, especially at the top. Honestly, I think we could get 7 inside of the first round. You're going to see some late risers here at the Combine just because of how well they're going to test, whether it's, Blake Miller out of Clemson, Max Ihanachor at Arizona State, Monroe Freeland at Georgia, who's really skyrocketed over the past few months or so. So if the Giants do want to take one at 5, one I would be comfortable taking, depending on what happens with Jermaine Illuminor, if they do bring him back, will be Francis Maui-Noah at Miami. I think he's a plug-and-play guy at that right type of spot. He reminds me a lot of Darnell Wright when he was coming out of Tennessee and ended up being a really good player now for the Bears. And he ended up going, I believe, inside the top 10.
You were one of the early adopters and believers in Mansour Delane, Jordan. You had him, I think, at number 6 in your top 50 very early in the process. And look, his tape shows it, right? I think you watch his tape, guys just don't get open against him. He's very sticky in his coverage. Do you think that's a real option for the Giants at 5? And what would be holding you back from pulling the trigger on a guy like Delane at 5? Because the tape certainly shows a guy worthy of top 10 consideration.
I would be fine with Mansour Delane at 5. He's my top-ranked corner in this year's draft, and I think he hit the nail on the head, John. He's sticky in coverage. He's really good with the ball skills as well. You can just look at any game from last season. The Clemson game from him was my favorite, his very first during his time at LSU. You see everything that you want to see, from somebody playing at that corner position. But the one drawback for me, if I'm the Giants, would be wanting to surround Jackson Dart with some weapons. So they could go offensive line. They could go wide receiver as well. It just depends on how highly they view some of the playmakers in this year's draft and also the offensive linemen. So if we want to put Jackson Dart in a position to succeed, especially with Malik Neighbors coming off of the torn ACL, they could look to add a receiver or a right tackle.
Yeah, let's go right off of that last comment you just made about the receivers. There seem to be a good cluster of receivers that you're going to be able to find in the top 3 rounds, all kinds of flavors, depending upon what your preference is. In your opinion, which receiver would be the best fit for the Giants at 5? Obviously, they may not go there, but if they go receiver, who would it be?
He'd be my top receiver, and that's Cardinal Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. I look at him, and he reminds me so much of Devontae Smith when he was coming out of Alabama. Now, I don't think he's the same caliber of prospect that Devontae was, but just from a build standpoint and traits standpoint, I think they have very similar stylistically. He has that slinky build at about 6'3", 190 pounds, but the hands are just so consistent with him. You could see him catch the ball outside of his body. He could scoop the ball down low. It doesn't have to be within his frame for him to catch the ball. Just having that type of security blanket for a quarterback, especially while they're still young, I think that would be very beneficial for Jackson Dart. But also, we've seen him maximize that number 2 wide receiver role already, opposite of Jeremiah Smith during his time at Ohio State. Him being in that number 2 role opposite of Malik Neighbors, we've already seen him in that role and how well he can play in it, just because I think Tate is more so a high-end wide receiver 2 on the next level as opposed to a true 1. So him being beside Neighbors, I think it'd be fireworks, man. With him, Neighbors, and Jackson Dart, I think that would be a fun trio moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think Tate's quite as twitchy as Devontae Smith, and I think that's kind of what brings him down a little bit of level there. I'm with you. How much distance, Jordan, do you have between the Tates, the Lemons, the Tysons, compared to that next group of guys, the Denzel Bostons, the Brazils, guys like that that are more likely to go at the end of the first round, top of the second?
It's not a huge separation, honestly, and that's just how this wide receiver class is. Very similar to offensive tackle. There isn't that bona fide top 5 guy that you feel really comfortable about taking that high. And I mean, you already hit on the big 3, Mekhi Lemon. We've talked about Tate plenty. And then also Jordan Tyson as well. I think those are your 3 that are probably going to go off of the board first, depending on Tyson's medical. I think he's firmly in that top 3. But that next tier, I think, is really interesting. You're talking about Casey Concepcion at Texas A&M, Omar Cooper at Indiana. I want to throw his name in there just because I think he's really talented too. You talked about Denzel Boston after that as well. And that next tier is really interesting to me as well. So if they don't want to take somebody on day 1, they definitely could take somebody on day 2. Chris Brazzell, you talked about him. Ted Hurst at Georgia State, I think he's really interesting. Malachi Fields at Notre Dame too. So in day 2, I think there's a lot of depth in this year's class too.
You said you were really high on Delane. The Giants have questions at corner on the boundaries, not necessarily in the slot where Phillips has done a nice job. At 37, let's say they don't go for 1 at 5. You think there's going to be enough of talent there at 37 for them?
Yeah, this day 2 class of corners, man, I'm in love with that, honestly. So corner is my favorite position to evaluate. I know it's crazy being a former quarterback saying corner is my favorite position to evaluate, but this day 2 group of corners is really interesting to me. That second bucket includes names like Julian Neal at Arkansas, Davinson Ibganosen at Ohio State. But one name I definitely think Giants fans could circle or should circle if they do want to take one early day 2 is Chris Johnson at San Diego State.
Love him.
He's one that is really, really interesting to me. Was co-defensive player of the year in the Mountain West this season. He really had a great year, has the ball production that you love to see. The big question that he needs to answer is his straight line speed. Yep. So there's going to be a lot of stopwatches out when he runs his 40 here at the Combine. But if he's able to check that box, I would not be shocked if he ends up going in the back end of the first round. But if he is there for the Giants at the top of the second round, I think they sprint the card in.
Yeah, no one ran past him at San Diego State. But then again, who was he playing at San Diego State, right? So I think that's why you have that question. I'm with you. Boys, and he had some makeup speed there, too. Guys would get behind him for a second, he'd make it up, and he kind of get out there and make those plays. Let's say the Giants don't go Styles at 5. Off-ball linebackers that maybe you like on day 2, Jordan.
There's 3 that I really like on day 2. Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas. He's one that I like quite a bit. Really aggressive, strong, downhill. Hammer that I like to say. He has some pass rush value off of the edge as well. They did a good job of using him in a pass rush element too. Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. I'm a big fan of him as well. Wouldn't be surprising if he sneaks into the back end of round 1. He can play Will. He can play Mike. He can play any position on the second level. He also has pass rush value as well. And if they're looking for somebody outside of round 2, Jacob Rodriguez at Texas Tech, who really filled up his mantle this year with all the accolades and the trophies that he was able to accumulate this year. He's a true traditional Mike. He's a little bit undersized, but you talk about the instincts, not only in the run game, but also the passing game as a former quarterback during his time at Virginia prior to Texas Tech. He's really instinctive in pass coverage too.
As the Giants go a little deeper into this draft, they don't have a third-round pick because they traded it last year to go get Jackson Dart with Houston. We all know that. So if they wanted to fortify the O-line, not knowing what Illuminor and Van Roten are going to do, how far can you go? Can you go to the 4th round to get a guard or a tackle that can be competitive?
There's a steep drop-off in this tackle class, honestly. I don't really feel comfortable with selecting anybody in that 4th or 5th round and saying that they have the potential to be a starter. So if they do want to take a tackle, I would prefer it to be at the top of the 2nd round, just because I think there's a precipitous drop-off once we really get into the 3rd round in this year's tackle class. And that's why I said 7 could potentially go in the 1st round, but there's a steep drop-off after that 2nd round range.
All right, final question, Joy. I know you got to run. You got a lot of these hits you got to do. Would you put any prospect in this class in the same grade tier that you had Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter in last year? You go before that, the Malik Neighbors tier with Marvin Harrison Jr. Would you put anyone in this class even at that level, or are we looking at a bunch of guys that will be picked at 3, 4, and 5 in this draft that normally will be picked at picks 11, 12, and 13 in a regular draft?
Yeah, I wouldn't. The only one that I would even entertain putting in that tier is Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame, just because when I'm stacking my big board, how I preface it is who could be Pro Bowl players or all-pro players right away. And I think he has Pro Bowl potential right out of the gate. He brings that Jahmyr Gibbs fear factor to the table, just because you not only can use him as a runner, but you could split him out wide. As a passer, too, you could put him in the slot and create those advantageous matchups against slot corners and linebackers and safeties. So Jeremiah Love will be the only one that I would be comfortable putting in that tier.
Jordan, good stuff, my friend. Enjoy the rest of the combine, and we'll find you all your stuff on ESPN.com. Any other stuff you want to put out there for us?
We actually just launched our NFL Draft Daily Show, which comes on ESPN2 every day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're playing catch-up or you're just trying to be further entertained and then also informed about this year's draft class, please check that out.
Enjoy Indy. Have a shrimp cocktail for us, Jordan. We appreciate it, man.
Always good to see you.
Thank you, guys, and stay warm.
And now we go back to Indianapolis, and we welcome in from the Giants table, EJ Snyder. First time he joins us right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. He's from Bootleg Football, the YouTube channel, the podcast, you name it. EJ, good to talk to you again, man. I haven't seen you since, I think, Shrine last year. Hope all is well.
Oh, all is very well. Thanks for having me on. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. We keep bumping into each other at these things and saying, hey, we got to do something. So I reached out this time and said, all right, so you're going to be there. Yeah. About the weather, but, are we going to do something? And we finally get to. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, I am pumped as well. So let's talk about the draft here. This is a very different type of draft. And how would you characterize the top of this if you're picking at 5 like the Giants? What's your thought process? What are you looking at? How are you thinking about this selection? Even understanding that right now we're not quite sure what the Giants' needs are going to be based on free agency.
Yeah, and that is always the question when you're looking at team building. It's got to be the entire table, right? Who are we going to re-sign? Who are we going to go get in free agency or offer or try to get? And then that leaves us our sort of full plate of needs. How does the draft line up with that or not? And they should all influence one another. But, Ryan Poles was up yesterday talking about it. He's like, look, we have scenarios for all this, but it's dynamic. If a thing happens over here, we react in another way. We don't know what we need yet. So we're still figuring that out. We're certainly looking at all the possibilities, and the Giants are in the exact same boat. So I would look at this draft and say there are strong areas in it. People keep saying, oh, it's a weak draft. It's not particularly top heavy. And being where the Giants are at 5, that's where the sort of danger zone comes in, is you get that temptation to reach for a player who maybe isn't necessarily the top 10 just because they play a certain position or something else, and you end up with somebody that's not great. So my advice to the Giants is the same as my advice to the Bears last year, because they were sitting at 10. A lot of people said, hey, you're out of the top 4. What are you going to do at 10, a top 10 pick with maybe nobody of that value? My advice, it sounds dumb, but it's true. Get a good football player. Don't miss. Just get a good football player. Forget about positional value. I understand maybe not running back, right? We can all have the running back debate about pay. But, if you really think that safety is the player and he's there, get a good football player. The worst thing that can happen is you pick somebody because you think you, quote unquote, should, and a couple of years from now you look back and go, I shouldn't have done it.
And so to that, I'm going to keep this very simple for you. The Giants pick 5th. EJ, who are your top 5 players in this draft?
Oh, well, if we're talking about, again, agnostic of positional value, because it's not a
Yes.
strong quarterback draft.
Just grades.
And that usually is how we stack. Again, not all my grades are done, but you can't start this draft without Jeremiah Love. Like Jeremiah Love, probably the most transcendent blue chip prospect that you can talk about. This is the running back from Notre Dame. There's some questions about him in the passing game down the field before this season. He basically said, hold my beer in the first 3 or 4 games of the year, started running down the field, catching the ball away from his frame, answered all those questions, and all the other ones were answered before that. So he's right there. Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, again, not a traditional value position in terms of tackle or edge rusher, quarterback, but one of the best football players in this draft, one of the safest picks from that perspective. Then I think the tackle class, there are 2 or 3 good tackles if you need an outside tackle who can play. And depending on your flavor, DJ said this week that it's a flavors draft, and I've been repeating that line over and over again. I think it is absolutely a flavors draft, which means eye of the beholder. Some of these players are going to be way up teams' boards, and we're going to have a high variance because of that.
I love the way you characterize that, flavors draft. I like that a lot. I hadn't heard that term before, but I like it. All right, let me ask you a little bit of a general question. John is very big with Joe Shane about taking as many swings in the draft as you can. The Giants have 7 picks, but they don't have a third rounder. They got 1 in the second, 1 in the first, nothing in the third, and 1 in the fourth. That's because of the deal last year for Jackson Dart. How hard is it going to be for the Giants maybe to move down from 37, maybe get a third-round pick by moving down some from the top of the second round? You think there's going to be an appetite for any team to do that? Because based on Shane's want to have more picks, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the classic draftism, right? Everybody would love more picks. It takes 2 to tango, and it really does depend on how the board falls. When we're talking about a flavors draft, you're talking about appetites. Appetites are either fueled or extinguished based on, hey, we didn't think that guy was going to be there. And a couple of teams will have grades on a guy. If he gets to 37, I guarantee Shane's already had conversations with those guys, because that's how it happens. Those conversations get set up now. It's not a draft day thing. It's a, hey, if our guy's there at 37, what would it cost, right? What would you charge us to come up from wherever they are? And those parameters are kicked around over dinner here in Indianapolis, right? Are you ready? They're having those conversations. Again, Insular League, people have all worked with each other, made deals with each other. They know how the front offices work, and they're already checking the prices. And the Giants are doing the same thing. What would it cost us to move up if a guy drops to, say, the top of day 2, and we're at 37 and we want to move up, 5 spots and go get him? What would that cost us? Is it worth it? You have to do all that stuff in advance because there's not enough time on draft day.
How much of a drop, EJ, do you have from Mansour Delane? Or maybe he's not your top corner. You could correct me if he's not.
I like him a lot.
All right, so do I. I think he's very good too. I think he's my 6th player on the board this year, maybe 7th. But how big is the drop off from him to that next group? The Jamal McCoy. I don't know how you think about him having not played last year. Avion Terrell, Chris Johnson from San Diego State. Colton Hood, that group, how big is that drop-off for you as the Giants try to maximize their value? If they need a corner, if you don't pick it delayed at 5, are you okay waiting until 37?
I think I am, because of the group you mentioned. There is that group, that bubble of that second tier of corners who I think are pretty good in this draft. Guys that are going to go in round 2 or maybe even round 3 that can start outside. That's incredibly valuable. Again, not top heavy. We don't have a ton of Sauce Gardners at the top of this draft who are competing for CB1 in the top 15 spots. That's some years. That's not this year. You maybe have the one guy. I think Delane is worthy of a pick up there. But if you don't get him, you don't have to panic. It's not one of those things where you have to make a panic pick and trade up because you're going to get aged out of the corner class. You're going to drop into that second round of players, and I think that's fine. I really like some of those players you mentioned. Chris Johnson's a favorite of mine. I'm not sad at all if you feel like you need corner, you go get Chris Johnson.
I'm going to ask you the same question, though, about wide receivers, because there does seem to be a flavor situation about the top
Very
wide receiver, right? But then after that, there does seem to be, once you get to that line of delineation, quite a large fishnet of second-level receivers, right?
No, I think you're dead on. I think this wide receiver class, I think there's a little bit of wide receiver fatigue in the draft community. We've had multiple years of very good wide receiver classes, and you're stacking very good against very good. Oh, is it as good as 2 years ago? Probably not. Is it as good as last year? Yeah, I would say the quality is similar, maybe a little bit different distribution, but still lots of flavors. You can get speed guys, guys with size. You can get guys that play the slot exclusively. You can get guys who are a little bit more all-arounders. So it's all there. And again, if you don't get your guy in wide receiver this year, that doesn't mean you need to panic.
What are some of your deeper groups in terms of positions in this class, EJ? I know a lot of people love the day 3 tight end group. I think it's pretty solid too. What are some of the groups where if you're looking in round 4, round 5, where you know what, this is a deep enough group where I can maybe even find the guy that can contribute in year 1 and eventually develop into an average starter?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love the tight end class. I know a lot of people don't. I think there are a lot of players down the board who will contribute. And again, with more teams going to multiple tight ends, with McVay leading the way on 13 personnel, you don't just need 1A and 1B anymore. You need a 1A, a 2A, a 2B, and maybe a C, right? It's multiple ways to attack defenses. You need tight ends who can do different things, and they are here. We have big, fast pass catchers like Michael Trigg out of Baylor. We've got guys like Tanner Koziol, who's a favorite of mine out of Houston. 6'7", 250, runs like a wide receiver. Double moves defensive backs. They don't believe him. They're like, no, how did you do that to me? So tight end is definitely one of those groups. I think safety has good depth, just like the corners that we talked about. Wide receiver we already talked about. And while it's not necessarily the same kind of depth, I think running back kind of starts to come into focus in round 4. Again, you've got 2, 3, maybe 4 guys at the top of this class, then sort of a wide shelf, couple of guys that maybe are a speed guy or a pass catching guy. And then in round 4, round 5, you start to take flyers on these guys. Saw it happen last year with players in even the 6th or 7th round who came in and contributed. Running back, I think, starts to sort of kick in round 4, even if it's sort of there's a wide gap in round 2, 3 for running.
I'd like to flip the coin and ask you about the offensive line, because while we seem to believe there aren't premium guys right up in the top 5 or so, it does seem like there are some playable guys who may be okay, but it does kind of drop off pretty quickly after that, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you're talking about starting tackles, there's 4 or 5 guys that, again, can play in certain systems, and I think probably are going to be very good, very stable NFL starters. And again, that's not a bad pick in the top half of the first round that's maybe lacking other blue chips. In terms of guard, I think this is a really good guard draft, and the Giants could use some guard help regardless of what happens. And
I agree
no
with
pun
that.
intended. But the guard group's really strong. There are some road graders here. There are guys with a lot of mobility who can really elevate your run game, keep a young quarterback like Jackson Dart protected. I know that's a premium in New York. Again, with the health issues he had as a rookie, you don't want that happening again. So investing in protection, whether it's tackle or guard, pretty wise decision.
EJ, I want to jump over to free agency very quickly. I know you track the league, obviously. What do you think the feel for this free agent period is going to be? Because I don't think it's an overly strong group, and the reason is pretty simple. The salary cap keeps going up. Teams have more money to spend to re-sign their own guys, so the best players just don't reach free agency. That's just the way it's gone in the National Football League. So there are a half dozen teams, maybe 4, I forget the number, that have to spend at least $50 million this year just to meet their minimum on the cap. So what is this going to look like where the supply is not great, but the demand is high, especially as teams watch the Patriots make the Super Bowl last year after doling out $200 million in guaranteed money last offseason?
Yeah, no, it's a prescient point, and I had this conversation Monday night. A lot of people don't realize, a lot of fans don't realize there's a floor. You have to spend the money. And the conversation was about, your neighbors, the Jets, right? And saying, oh, they're not going to pay Breece Hall. I was like, they have to pay somebody. They literally have to pay someone. Who else are they going to pay? It's not about Breece as a value or not. They just haven't drafted well enough to have that young core. It's kind of the opposite of the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs have too many good young players. They're having to let them go because they can't pay them all. Jets are in the reverse situation. They're just looking for guys to give money to. And the thing about free agency, again, this one came from DJ, said, I used to go to Blockbuster and get videos, and you wanted the cardboard box. And he said there was no worse feeling than pulling the cardboard box and there was no cassettes behind it. He said, I feel that way about free agency after the tags get applied because everybody says, oh, this guy's going to make it and this guy's going to make it. And then you get there and it's a third of that. And of course, it's the lower third because anybody that has any value doesn't hit the open market. So I almost don't listen to those early projections because I, too, as an NFL fan, I'm like, oh, I could, if I'm a team that needs a tight end, great. Well, 3 of the top 4 get tagged, don't make it. Is the 4th guy really going to move the needle for me? I don't know. He's about as good as my guy. Yeah.
All right. So with how about this, unsexy class of free agency? And we always talk about how free agency is supposed to plug the biggest holes so that you don't go into the draft hungry, right? That's a phrase
Correct.
we've all heard 1,000 times. Well, if free agency isn't going to satisfy your starvation, doesn't that triple the importance of the draft this year?
In a draft where there's not a top-heavy guys that are probably going to help you right away. So if you want to get much better this offseason, good luck to you.
Seriously, we're looking at a very, very important draft for GMs who are going to be walking a tightrope.
No, I fully agree. And we're going to see reactions based on that. Overreactions based on that. That's going to be overpays in free agency. That's going to be panic picks to move up because teams believe if we don't get this guy, we can't move the needle because there's a gap or he doesn't fit our system or anything else. So you're going to see some, from my perspective as an overall league watcher, exciting stuff that's going to be maybe not necessarily justifiable until you dig into the nuance, the backstory, and you go, hey, why did this happen? Why did we see this wild swing? Well, look at what's behind him. Or if that guy in his room gets injured, what's he left with? That's his starter? Okay, I can see why he doubled down. I can see why he traded him.
And I think you look at teams that have connections, right? This will be the last question, I think, EJ. One connection I've seen made, I think, makes a lot of sense. The Chargers have a lot of offensive line issues, right? Their general manager used to be with the Ravens. Well, guess what? Ravens players are free agent at center this year. Tyler Linderbaum, right? So if you're going to go spend money, spend on a guy that you know and you believe in.
Sure.
So as the Giants try to build this thing with John Harbaugh, who do you think are the type of players and positions that you think he might want to target in free agency as opposed to waiting to the draft in?
Well, again, those relationships are really important, and not just his, but the coaches he brings in, because you're building that sort of, people talk about coaching trees. This is the root ball. This is the network that stretches across the entire league. It's you, your assistant coaches, your GAs, players that have played with other players who have those recommendations that says, look, you need this, you need toughness, you need edge setting. This is your guy. He's going to be there for you. If you have somebody on your team that's played with that player or represented that player, vouches for him and says he can fill the need you really need, you feel a lot better about going and spending the money, which again is going to go up every year. And people are going to say, we see it every year, but like last year you saw, wide receiver 3s getting $10 million. If you had a pulse and you could hold a mirror up and fog it, you got $10 million to play wide receiver. Everybody goes, what? That guy's not worth $10 million. Well, again, you have to spend the money. You can't play an empty roster spot. You can't just put a jersey with air out there. You got to put people on the field, and they're going to cost more than you quote unquote think they should. So how can you insulate yourself against getting burned? Again, relationships. I can vouch, I've already in the Chargers case, I already know who Linderbaum is, right? And Harbaugh's doing the same thing if he's smart. And I think he is with his staff and going, hey, who's going to say that this guy's going to fill our need the way we want it filled to be one of our guys in our system?
Christian Kirk sends his regards in relation to your point on the wide receivers, by the way. EJ, you are cleanup hitter. You're our final guest on our Combine Big Blue Kickoff Lives this week. We really appreciate the time, man, and tell the folks where they can find all your great work.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. Bootleg Football's on YouTube. We've got one episode a week throughout draft season. We also have a special run with the NFLSE guys, the Stock Exchange guys. We're calling that the Blue Chip Committee. It is 2-hour episodes. It is 4 2-hour episodes diving deep into topics that maybe we didn't get to pull on the thread completely in our own podcast. A lot of fun. First one's already out. Draft fans will want to check that out.
I love that. 2 hours. That means everybody in the New York metro area can put it on their pod and listen to it while they're shoveling out.
I don't think they might need 2 episodes with all the snow you guys got.
EJ, good stuff, my friend. You know what? I think I was out for 5.5. I needed 3 of them over the past couple of days. Good stuff, man. Enjoy the rest of the week in Indy, my friend.
Safe travels.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
We thank EJ and all of our guests today for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. In fact, in our final show at the Combine of the week, just thanks to all our guests. I'm not going to list them all because, frankly, I don't have them in front of me. But everyone did a great job. We really appreciate them joining us. And a special thanks again to Matt Stopsy out there in Indy for manning the table, getting all these Zoom calls up. Thank you for the guests for being flexible. And Pearson Butler, Charles Erdman here back in the studio in East Rutherford for getting these live Zooms on the air. So even though we weren't in Indy, Paul, at least when it came to the shows, it felt like we were in Indy,
Hey,
which is
key
great.
word for the Giants this year is all about collaboration. And this show absolutely was all week.
Yeah. So, guys, there's plenty more Combine stuff coming your way over the weekend. We got huddles going up. One more today. We have all the events over the weekend. The offensive lineman workout, the defensive backs, I believe, workout still. So a lot still going on at the Combine. Make sure you check it out. Next week, we'll do some Combine review on Monday and Tuesday with draft season and a Giants huddle. Then we will flip the page over to free agency. We're going to have Joe Corey join us on the Giants Huddle podcast. We're going to have Big Blue Kickoff Live all week as usual. And then free agency starts the following week. So free agency, basically, folks, the legal negotiating period is 10 days away.
Amazing.
It's 10 days. It goes fast. So we have to flip the page quickly. We'll do a couple weeks of free agency, and then we will turn the page right back to the draft again. And then we're in a sprint. You're basically 5-6 weeks till the draft. So not a lot of time, but a lot to get done as we continue to dive into the draft class, study the players, and see what the Giants end up doing. Paul, final thoughts?
I just can't wait to get it going, John, because the sooner we get through all of this, the sooner we get to training camp, and we can really find out what the Giants have in store for us.
Yeah, and then, of course, OTAs begin in May and June, and off-season workouts, all that stuff. It should be a lot of fun as we learn what John Harbaugh's program really, really looks like, which is really the whole point of this whole thing, right? And we'll see what the Giants can do in 2025. Looking for more than just a ticket? Elevate Experiences delivers VIP access to the world's biggest events. From Super Bowl to NASCAR to PGA tournaments, don't just attend. Elevate the experience at elevateexperiences.com. I hope your experience watching Big Blue Kickoff Live was elevated this week, considering we were out at the NFL Combine with a lot of our guests. Hope you enjoyed it. I know we did. And hopefully next year, we'll be out there doing it in person. For Paul Dottino, I am John Schmeelk. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll be back on Monday with another Big Blue Kickoff Live. Until then, oh, by the way, I should mention one more thing. WFAN on Saturday. I forgot. We're live on FAN on Saturday from 5 to 7. Hopefully you didn't hit stop on your podcast player yet, even though it looked like I was going to end. I didn't. I faked you out. We're on FAN, me and Paul, from 5 to 7 on Saturday. Tony Pauline's going to be on with us at 6 o'clock. We'll do a long spot with him, review everything that happened in the NFL Combine and everything that has happened during the week and what's happened since we signed off today. So now I promise we're done. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye.